I have something that I am very excited to share with you guys in this video today. This is Ralph Gibson's new book. It is called Refractions 2. I got my copy a little over a week ago. I am really excited to be sharing this with you guys in this video today. If you would like to get a copy of this, I will put a link in the description, and also there is an offer code if you want to save 10% on your copy. They ship worldwide pretty much. You use offer code AOP, that will get you 10% off, and I'll put the link in the description. But in this video, I want to break this down and talk about Refractions 2 a little bit. So if you follow this channel, you have probably seen the 2 interview excerpts that I have posted on Ralph Gibson. If you haven't seen them, I've got a playlist. I will post it up here. Highly recommend that you check those out. So I went up to Exton, Pennsylvania a couple months ago to do those, and we went up to the printer, which is Brilliant Graphics, who did this book, and that's where I did those interviews. There is a 3rd interview that I'm going to be posting in the next week or so here. That includes Ralph as well as Bob Tersak. Bob Tersak owns Brilliant. I met Bob for the first time, I guess about a year and a half ago. We both had an opportunity to take Ralph Gibson's bookmaking workshop. Bob is a really interesting guy, and I think the big takeaway from this trip is when you get to see what a really great printer does behind the scenes. This book is absolutely beautiful, and it's not only from a mechanical standpoint, but it's also because Bob is he's so good at what he does. I've never met somebody who's so intense about eating, sleeping, and breathing the business of making books and printing. He really is that good at what he does. And so that's a really cool interview, and I'll be posting that shortly. Small technical note on this book. I'm going to try and show you this in the B-roll, but this was printed using a 400-line hybrid screen process. And if you don't know what that means, it essentially means this is about double the resolution of just about any other photo book that you're going to find out there. This is one of the big takeaways from me of going up to Brilliant and meeting Bob in person, is like there were no corners cut in producing this book. It is one of the most beautiful books that I've ever seen printed. Did a really nice job on here. And a side note about Bob, and you'll see this in his interview excerpt, I have never met anybody who knows more about the history of photography books than Bob Tersak. He has a massive collection, and he's just an encyclopedia of knowledge on this stuff. And so this fits right in with the canon, so to speak, and it outdoes most everything out there. It is really gorgeous. But I want to get into the content of Refractions 2. So what is Refractions 2? Well, actually, there was a Refractions 1. It was just called Refractions. It was a book that Ralph did a couple years back. It's long since out of print. Bob found a copy of this book, and he had reached out to Ralph and said, well, maybe we could just reprint Refractions. And Ralph said, well, we'll do one better. Let's do a Refractions 2, and it'll be expanded, and I can go into more detail. And so that's what we've got with this book. Now, I've had my copy for over a week and a half now, and I've read the whole thing twice. And trying to describe this, it's just very unusual, very unique, and very different for a photo book. Refractions 2 is Ralph's approach to photography, having a 60-year-plus career. All of his influences, the stuff he's learned from mentors. So Refractions 2 is not an autobiography. The best way I can describe it is it's an opportunity to go live inside Ralph Gibson's head for a while and see how he thinks. This is what makes this book so unique, not only in the history of photography, but I think in the history of art. I mean, you consider all the great artists. How many documents have people left behind explaining from an intellectual level their entire thought process behind things? And that's what makes this just extremely unusual to find. And so if you look at the table of contents, for example, Ralph covers a wide spectrum of topics in here. Everything from aesthetics and styles of photography to artists that inspired him, his relationship with the Leica, why he prefers the rangefinder. It goes into musical influences, the idea of light, the negative, the darkroom, the difference between digital and analog photography, even going into lithography and the printed page. Ralph is known for doing a wide range of books through his career, and he talks a lot about this process. Of course, the book is beautifully printed. There's a ton of Ralph's images in here, but what I love about it is there's other images too for support material. One of my favorite chapters in here is called Aspects of Influence, and this is the chapter where he talks about artists such as Bill Brandt, Alfred Hitchcock, or even Dorothea Lange, who he not only was inspired by and influenced by, but also worked for as a printer. And he talks a lot in here about this dichotomy that an artist has and the struggle between adapting your own influences through culture or context and then actually doing your own original work and where that line is. So for instance, Bill Brandt and the influence of geometrical forms in portraits, Alfred Hitchcock and the whole idea of using an insert, which is a film technique where you cut into an extreme close-up of an object for emphasis, and another one of my favorites, which is Dorothea Lange, The Woman in the Car, versus Ralph's Woman in the Car, which was done years later as part of the Somnambulist book, which was his first book. There's another section in here on surrealism. Now, I've interviewed some other photographers who had a heavy surrealism influence to their work, that those photographers generally try to avoid it and separate themselves from it. Ralph actually embraces this. artists. He talks about the rise of Freudian thought, the whole aspect of what that means in his work, not only from a conceptual standpoint, but also from his mother's side in a genealogical standpoint. It's sort of in his blood. This was something that came through, especially in Ralph's early work, where there was kind of this stream of conscious idea to the photo book and the idea of something like The Somnambulist or even Days at Sea. And like all of the sections in here, Ralph not only talks about the influence of things, but actually specifically how they influenced his work and the directions that he decided to take with various things. So Refractions 2 is a manual of sorts, but not in the conventional sense. Like when you go to the bookstore and you want to pick up a book and you want to learn how f-stops work or shutter speeds or ISO, this book doesn't go into that. If you want to take that much further and understand how an artist thinks, how Ralph thinks, and how to approach developing your own, as Ralph says, your own visual signature, this is the book for you. So if you haven't seen the 2 interview videos that I've done, highly recommend that you go check them out. We've got a third coming. I was really honored to have come in on this project, sort of at the tail end to help with the promotional side of things. Ralph is a good friend of mine, and I'm really excited about this book and the whole project in general. So when I went up to Exton, they were actually doing the press check, and the press check is kind of the point in the process where the artist comes in, is going to check the color, double check all the layouts, make sure everything is absolutely perfect before this actually goes on press. There's no turning back, and it actually gets printed and turned into a book. So it was an exciting thing to go witness and be able to interview people and just experience that whole thing. And since then, obviously, the book has been printed. It is ready for release. And like I said, I'll put a link in the show description, so go check it out. If you want to save 10%, Ralph is doing a code for me. So if you use offer code AOP on checkout, that's offer code AOP, you'll save 10% on your copy of Refractions 2. Something I want to say about Ralph Gibson, and we have become friends over the last couple years. I think very highly of him as an artist, as a photographer. He was somebody that when I started out, that I discovered just in going to bookstores, and I would find Ralph's books. I remember the first one I found was this copy of Ex Libris, which was this amazing book. It's a book on books. It's got some amazing work in it. And there was just something about Ralph as I started buying these books and the intellect which he was portraying through photography and the maturity of the work, the depth of the work. And it was a big influence on me. And I met him for the first time in 2016 when I happened to be in New York. And his gallerist through Paris, Thierry, actually had called me up, took me out, and we went and got coffee. And he said, well, Ralph wants to meet you. Let's go over to his studio. And it was just the weirdest surprise. And it was so amazing. And Ralph and I kept up after that for a number of years. And then in 2020, when the pandemic hit, Ralph was doing his Advancing Photographer workshop. And I decided to take that. And it was an opportunity to go one-on-one with Ralph with my own work. I didn't talk about it on this channel at all. It was something that I just wanted to do for me. And to have one of your heroes critique your work and give you insight like that was just an amazing experience. And so stuff like this book, when it comes out, it brings and personifies a lot of that into a format that a lot of people can experience and discover. And then the ultimate opportunity came up last year when Ralph was inducted into Leica's Hall of Fame. And so Leica actually brought me into that project. I produced 2 videos that are on their YouTube channel. And then I got to actually fly to Germany after he accepted the award. I moderated a conversation in front of the audience. And so Ralph and I have done a lot of dialogue, a lot of talking over the last year. And this is something that we're actually hoping to continue in the coming months. And so stay tuned, because there's a lot to learn and a lot that I want to share with you guys. And it's just an honor for me to be able to bring him into this. So anyway, if you have any questions on anything, drop them in the comments below. I will catch you guys in the next video. Until then, later.